Hello and welcome again. It's pleasing to report that the Letter to Police Stations campaign is progressing well. Many volunteers have joined in, and they will have been sent to every police station in the country within a few days now. I'm attaching a brief video clip of why we're doing this and how those involved are enjoying standing for the truth and the community spirit that occurs when people do this of their own free will, for the good not just of themselves, but the entire community. We'll be starting the follow-up calls next week to see if the officers in charge have considered and acted upon their duty to encourage those under their commands to comply with the law. Meanwhile, it's time to move on to another group of alleged public servants, the unlawful local councils. It's that time of year when these bogus groups send out their extortionate demands for rates, acting for all the world as though they have the authority to make such claims. If only the general population knew that this is all a fake scam, how many would fall for it and just meekly pay up? The irony is that the information about this con trick is public knowledge. But too many people are distracted with meaningless gobbledygook from the media about new virus scares, football finals of various codes, and outright manipulation of thought patterns by being fed a constant diet of fear porn about wars, rumours of wars, and threats to their financial well-being, by drummed-up political controversies, about votes on whether to divide the country on racist grounds relating to the structure of Parliament. The secret combinations are certainly pulling out all the stops at the moment. Of course, rates aren't the only rorts being tried by local councils. There are parking fines, pet licensing fees, building approvals for renovations and additions to one's own property. The list goes on. Nowadays, the local council near where I live has on its agenda trips to Europe and other far-flung places for selected councillors, all at enormous unnecessary cost, of course. These costs get factored into increased rates and fees each year. I'm wondering why councillors from Rockingham in Western Australia need to travel to Europe or Asia to improve the conditions of their local constituents here. Though I'm sure the answers to such questions, if they were ever permitted to be asked by local people in council chambers, would produce answers that left the questioners no wiser than before. The plain fact is that local councils, or any other form of local government, have been constitutionally banned in Australia. The document we're sending out to each council around the country makes this plain and points out the serious nature of the criminal actions being committed by those in these corporations. For yes, that is what local councils are, in law, a series of corporate entities registered on Dun and Bradstreet, just like the courts, the police forces, and the fake government departments. They all have ABN numbers and pay GST to the Australian Tax Office. One wonders to whom the ATO pays its GST. So how did all this corporate jiggery-pokery get underway? What is the constitutional mechanism whereby the Crown becomes a corporation with a licence to extract profits at its own decided level of extortion from Crown subjects? And the answer is, of course, that there is no such mechanism. And whatever bogus scheme is operating at present, trumpeting its claims of legality, is entirely unlawful, indeed treasonous. If it had been Bunnings, Coles or McDonald's which had bought the votes of parliamentarians and got legislation passed stating that these companies could start calling themselves the state government, the Supreme Court, or the WA police force, one suspects there would have been an outcry. However, because this was done deceptively, hardly anyone realises what is going on, or is prepared to do anything about it. When I say deceptively, the steps taken were all openly visible to those prepared to look at the evidence. Legislation, after all, is gazetted for the public to read. The deception consists of the myriad distractions, such as those mentioned, the spurious, childish arguments between politicians, and the propaganda endlessly pumped out by the otherwise totally unfit for purpose mainstream media. Nevertheless, those entities calling themselves by those fancy official names are no more legitimate than would be your rates bill if it arrived with a Bunnings letterhead, instead of whatever name by which your local council goes. If it were Coles sending you your pet licence renewal, would you pay it? Or would you demand of them by what authority they were presuming to levy this charge? Yet that is the exact situation with regard to councils. They have no lawful authority at all. But don't take my word for it. Look it up for yourselves. The links are there. Of course, many of the functions carried out by existing councils are necessary, but the Constitution provides that these be done by private enterprise, with companies competing to provide services such as rubbish removal and maintenance of roads, parks and gardens, etc., and individual residents able to negotiate for which services they require. There is no provision for companies to set themselves up as monopolies and make threats if people don't wish to deal with them. I'm going to go through the 12-point document we're sending to all the councils so that you can see from where these statements derive. 1. Are you aware that local councils have no lawful authority to make demands, levy fees and charges, or impose fines? 2. Are you aware that making unlawful demands on fellow Crown subjects using the excuse that I'm just doing my job is a criminal offence for which you may expect to stand trial before a jury of your peers? 3. Do you understand that the people of Australia have twice rejected the proposition in referenda that local government be included as a third tier of government in this country? 4. The first was in 1974 when the proposal was for the federal government to be granted the power to provide funding to local government agencies as it saw fit. The second was in 1988 when the proposal to directly establish local government as a third tier was rejected by all states by an almost 2-to-1 majority. 5. All state acts or statutes which purport to give authority to local councils are therefore unconstitutional and unlawful, lack royal assent from a legitimate line of authority, and attempting to enforce them is a criminal act. Do you understand? 6. An even stronger reason why legislation falsely asserting authority to state governments to initiate local councils is unlawful is the invocation on March 23, 2001, of Article 61 of Magna Carta 1215. Magna Carta is the formalised restatement of the English common law constitution, covers the entire British Commonwealth, and overrides all statute law. 7. Failure to disprove the previous 5 points serves as evidence that you lack legitimate authority to make demands. You are working for a for-profit corporation devoid of Crown authority, no different to Coles or Bunnings. 8. When people make unlawful demands or issue threats with menaces to command compliance, it is the individual signing the demands who is liable in their personal and unlimited capacity for any damage caused or damages awarded. Do you understand? 9. Being an order follower is very unwise because all Crown subjects are expected to follow their consciences in upholding the common law, irrespective of position. No job grants lawful authority to deliberately infringe another's inalienable rights. 10. You are advised to make searching inquiries of your employers regarding these points to avoid potentially disastrous outcomes to your financial and social standings in the future. 11. All these points are easily provable, and simply taking the word of your employers rather than doing your own due diligence is not recommended. Maxim in law: ignorance of the law is no excuse. 12. Supporting our families is very important, but there are plenty of jobs available which do not involve criminal behaviour. To gain some understanding of the implications of this advice sheet, access the links shown below. There is no doubt that very few people working in local council offices realise that they are committing crimes. Real crimes, not the imaginary ones for which they think they are punishing us. It's our job to educate them, after which, if they persist in their unlawfulness, they forfeit their right to a claim of ignorance. This is no easy task, but if it's not tackled, eventually the corporate serpent which has been insinuating its coils into the body politic and all of our lives will gain de facto control of the law and enslave everyone under the piratical law of the sea as opposed to the moral law of the land. It's a subject for another video, how this maritime or admiralty law has heaved itself onto the land and sought to eradicate the true law of the land. But for now, it's urgent that we alert these alleged public servants to the errors of their ways. It's notable that nowadays, when we ask those claiming to be government authorities to recite their oaths of office, a common response is that they've never sworn one. If anyone is in this position, believing themselves to be duly appointed officers of government, but have not sworn an oath of office, they may know of a certainty that they are merely corporate dog's bodies, bereft of any Crown authority, and thus committing treason every time they purport to act as such. A day of reckoning will come, if not to them, then to those to whom they bequeath the fruits of their criminal labours, who may well have to demonstrate that their assets are not the proceeds of crime, their benefactors' crimes. We're calling again on everyone to download and send out these documents, the list and the covering letter, to their local councils. They will be available from the first link in the comments box. There is no need for registered mail. Many of the CEOs and people working in council offices at the moment will already have received some or all of David Robinson's notices, and if not, they will eventually. Those notices are sent by registered mail, as they will form evidence in future trials by jury. These informative sheets are a courtesy performed by people who know their rights and are concerned that everyone's rights are respected. Any council workers receiving these documents would be well advised to treat them with the respect that they deserve, at least for the benefit of their own descendants and families. Do your due diligence. It's not only the safest, but the most moral course of action. Always remember, actions have consequences. Thank you for watching.